If the accident hadn't happened, I never would have known that I would have gone through the rest of my life believing the lie, thinking Cecilia was the loving wife she pretended to be. Thinking my home was mine, but fate has a funny way of showing you the truth. It started as an ordinary day. I was supposed to be away for the weekend, a business trip 2 states over. Cecilia had kissed me goodbye, smiled, told me to drive safe. She was so convincing, like she wasn't counting down the minutes until I left, like she wasn't planning something the moment I walked out that door. But I never made it to my destination. Halfway through the trip, a car swerved into my lane. Metal screeched, tires skidded, my body slammed forward, then blackness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Bruised, shaken, but alive. The doctors said I was lucky. I should have felt lucky, but I didn't, because something didn't sit right with me, something about Cecilia's voice when I called her. I dialed her number from the hospital bed, my hand still shaking from the crash. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Hardy? Her voice was too controlled. Hey, I exhaled. I got into an accident. A pause. Then the most forced, rehearsed concern I had ever heard. Oh my God, are you okay? I'm fine, I said slowly, trying to pick apart her tone. Car's totaled, but I'll be discharged soon. Another pause. She should have been relieved, she should have been asking if I needed her to come get me. Instead, she hesitated. Then said, that's awful. But, are you sure you don't want to stay in the hospital for a while? Just to be safe? That's when I knew something was off, because the woman I married? The real Cecilia, she was the type to panic over a paper cut, but now? She was too calm, like she was stalling that I didn't tell her I was getting a ride home that I just left. The hospital discharged me within hours, and my friend dropped me off in front of my house. It was late. The street was quiet. The lights in my home were on, and my gut, it was screaming. I walked up the driveway, my ribs aching, my mind racing. Then, just as I reached the front door, I heard laughter. A man's laughter, inside my house, inside my home. My pulse spiked. I stepped inside without making a sound, and that's when I saw it, Cecilia, sitting at my table, with another man. A candle at dinner. My best wine. My wife sitting across from him, smiling like she was in love. And when she turned and saw me standing there, her face drained of color. The first thing she said wasn't, Hardy. Oh my God. It wasn't, what happened? No. It was a cold, quiet, horrified, you're not supposed to be here. That was all I needed to hear. She was caught, frozen in place, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. The same woman who had kissed me goodbye less than 24 hours ago was now sitting at my dining table, across from a man who wasn't me. A man who was comfortable in my home. My first instinct wasn't rage. It was clarity. This is who she really is. The moment felt stretched. Cecilia still staring at me, her mind scrambling for an excuse. The man beside her shifting uneasily, looking between me and her, realizing he had just stepped into something much bigger than a casual affair. I took my time. Looking around. 2 wine glasses. A bottle of my best vintage, one we had been saving for a special occasion. Candles lit, soft music playing from the speaker. A date. She hadn't just invited another man over, she had replaced me. Cecilia finally snapped out of her shock. She stood quickly, smoothing her dress like she could erase the moment. Hardy, I thought you were in the hospital. I raised an eyebrow. Clearly. She swallowed hard. I was going to come see you in the morning. She flicked a glance at the man beside her, her voice shaky now. I didn't expect you home. Not, I can explain, not, this isn't what it looks like, just, I didn't expect you home, as if that made it better. As if the betrayal only mattered because I saw it. The man beside her finally spoke. Hey, man, listen. I cut him off with a look. He had no idea who I was. No idea what kind of man I would be in this moment. I wasn't going to scream or break things or throw punches. I was going to make them both regret this in a way they would never forget. I exhaled, slowly, deliberately. So, I said, who's this? Cecilia opened her mouth, closed it again. Then, the act began. She laughed, a nervous, forced laugh. Like this was nothing serious. Hardy, you're being dramatic. This is just a friend. Friend of a friend who was having dinner at my table. Drinking my wine. Sitting in my chair I let the silence stretch, staring at her. Watching her squirm, then, finally, I asked, "Does your friend know you're married?" She hesitated, that was all the answer I needed. The man's face shifted. Confusion, then realization, then something close to panic that he turned to Cecilia. "Wait. You're married?" She reached for his hand like she could control the situation. "Baby, it's baby," that I laughed. That was the moment she knew she had lost. I stepped forward, slowly, deliberately. Not toward Cecilia, toward him. "Do me a favor," I said smoothly. "Since she's been lying to both of us," I nodded toward the door, "get out of my house." His eyes flicked to her. "Cecilia," I said, "get out." This time, my voice wasn't calm. This time, I let a fraction of my anger show, and he bolted. Didn't even bother finishing his drink. Just grabbed his jacket, pushed past me, and disappeared out the door. The second the door slammed shut, I turned to my wife. She was shaking. Hands clenched at her sides, but not because she was sorry, because she knew there was nothing left to say. She opened her mouth probably to try another lie. I held up a hand. "Don't." She froze, then, quietly, I said, "How long?" She swallowed. "Hardy, listen, how long?" Her lips trembled, then, softly, 4 months. 4 months. 4 months of coming home to me every night. 4 months of lying to my face. 4 months of sleeping in my bed while secretly giving herself to someone else. I let out a slow breath. I felt nothing. No heartbreak. No sadness, just cold, crushing reality. This wasn't the woman I thought I married, and now, she was about to find out exactly what that meant. 4 months. For 4 months, my wife had been sleeping with another man while I went to work, paid the bills, kissed her goodnight, and believed we were still a team. I should have felt heartbroken, but all I felt was cold, calculated clarity. She stood there, arms wrapped around herself, watching me carefully, waiting to see if I would explode, waiting to see how much she could still manipulate me. But that version of me, the one who loved her, the one who trusted her, he died the second I saw her with another man at my table. Cecilia finally swallowed hard, stepping toward me. "Hardy, I swear," I held up a hand. She stopped immediately. I wasn't the kind of man who screamed and threw things. That would be too easy for her. I wanted her to feel small. To feel exactly how much she had already lost. So, I spoke calmly. "So, let me guess," I murmured. "It wasn't serious, right?" She licked her lips, eyes flickering with something recognition. She had used that line before, probably on him. "Hardy," she whispered. I took a step forward, watching as she backed up instinctively. "Or maybe," I continued, voice too smooth, too controlled, "you were just lonely? Maybe you were just looking for something more." Tears welled in her eyes. Fake. This wasn't remorse, this was fear, because she knew I was done playing her game. She took a shaky breath. I didn't mean for it to happen." I laughed. "You didn't mean to sleep with him?" I asked, tilting my head. "Did you trip and fall into his bed? Into his arms? Onto his d?" She flinched, and that was when I saw it, a flicker of anger, the real Cecilia, not the soft, apologetic wife trying to act regretful, but the cold, selfish woman who had spent months lying to my face. And now, she was realizing her power over me was gone. Her lips trembled. "You've been distant," she said quietly. "You don't look at me the same way you used to." I exhaled, shaking my head. "Unbelievable." She sniffled. "I'm not saying it's your fault, I cut her off with a laugh. A real, sharp, bitter laugh, because now, she was trying to blame me, like I was the reason she had spread her legs for another man, like I had forced her into months of deception. I let the silence stretch, watching her squirm. Then, finally, I whispered, "You're pathetic." She let out a shaky breath. "Hardy, please." I turned around, grabbing my keys off the counter. She panicked. "Where are you going?" I opened the door. "Anywhere but here." She took a step forward. "Hardy, don't." I looked at her one last time. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, the woman who had destroyed everything, then I said the words she never thought she'd hear, "We're done." And I walked out, and I expected her to let me go, expected her to accept the consequences, but women like Cecilia, they don't accept defeat, they don't understand what it means to lose. So, instead of letting me walk away, she did what cheaters always do, she followed. I was halfway down the driveway when I heard the door fly open behind me. "Hardy, wait." I kept walking. I wasn't interested in hearing another lie, another twisted excuse, but then she grabbed my arm, her fingers clawed onto me like I was her lifeline, like I was her last chance. I turned around, slowly, staring down at her. She was shaking. Tears in her eyes. "Please," she whispered. "We can fix this." I let out a sharp laugh. "Fix this?" I repeated. "Cecilia, you had a man sitting at my table. Drinking my wine. Touching you in my house. Tell me, what exactly do you think we're fixing?" She swallowed hard. I was stupid. I wasn't thinking. "You weren't thinking for 4 months?" Her breath hitched. I yanked my arm away from her and she knew, right then, she had lost. She staggered back, blinking fast, like she couldn't believe what was happening. Like she had expected me to forgive her. Take her back. Accept that she had spent months betraying me and still get down on my knees to fight for her, but I wasn't that man anymore. I wasn't her fool. She reached for me again, but this time I stepped back. I watched her crumble. "Hardy, don't do this," she whispered. I met her gaze. Unflinching. "I didn't do anything, Cecilia." I exhaled. "You did this." Her lip trembled. "But I still love you." I tilted my head. "No, you don't." She opened her mouth, startled because no one had ever called her out like that before. She had spent months choosing someone else, she had made that choice again, and now, she was finally paying for it. I turned around and got in my car. She stood there, barefoot in the driveway, helpless, waiting for me to stop. Change my mind. Give her a second chance. She didn't deserve. I started the engine. And I never looked back. I drove away, feeling nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just finality. Cecilia had spent 4 months making a fool out of me. She thought I would do what she had counted on: scream, argue, fight for her. She thought I would break down and give her a reason to rewrite the story, but I didn't give her that. I gave her silence, and that was the one thing she couldn't handle. I checked my phone later that night. 12 missed calls, all from her. I didn't answer, because now, she was chasing me. The next morning, she showed up. Not a text. Not a call. She came to my friend's house, where I had been staying for the night, pounded on the door like she was owed something. I let her knock. I let her stand there, waiting. Then, finally, I opened the door. She gasped when she saw me, like she thought I had disappeared. "Hardy," she whispered. "You left." I leaned against the doorframe, staring at her. "Yeah." Her eyes searched mine, desperate. "We need to talk." I folded my arms. "About what?" She swallowed. "About us." I smiled, shaking my head. "There is no us anymore, Cecilia." She stepped forward, reached for me, like she thought she could still fix this. I let her hand hover there. Let her feel the distance she had created. She dropped her arm, her voice cracked. "Hardy, please. You don't understand." I raised an eyebrow. "No?" "Then tell me, Cecilia, what is it that I don't understand?" She hesitated. She had nothing. She wasn't sorry for cheating, she was sorry she had been caught. I exhaled, stepping back. "You need to leave." Her breath hitched. "You don't mean that." I met her gaze. Unflinching, "Yes, I do." And then, I shut the door in her face. She had expected a fight. Instead, she got the one thing that scared her the most, being ignored. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. A message from her: "Cecilia, I made a mistake. Please, let's talk." I stared at the screen, then, slowly, I typed back, "You didn't make a mistake, Cecilia. You made a choice." And I never replied again. I didn't respond to Cecilia's message. I didn't need to. She had spent 4 months choosing someone else over me, lying, sneaking around, betraying everything we built together. Now, she could live with that choice. The next morning, she called that I let it ring, then another call and another. By noon, my phone had 20 missed calls, then, finally, a text, Cecilia, Hardy, please. Can we talk? Just once, I smirked. She wasn't used to this, she was used to being the one in control, the one who got to choose whether she wanted me or not, but now, that control was gone, and she was starting to realize it. That evening, I was sitting on my friend's couch, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a knock at the door that I already knew who it was. I took my time walking over, exhaling before I pulled it open, and there she was. Cecilia, her eyes were puffy, red-rimmed, she looked tired, desperate. For a split second, I thought about all the times I had loved her. All the times I had believed she was the woman I would grow old with. Then I remembered the candlelit dinner at my table and the feeling vanished. Hardy, she whispered. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. Cecilia. She bit her lip. I don't even know where to start. I nodded. Maybe start with the part where you thought you could cheat on me for 4 months and still have the nerve to stand here. She winced. I never wanted to hurt you. I chuckled. Then you shouldn't have. Silence. Then she switched tactics. She softened. Hardy, she murmured, stepping closer. We were happy once. You and me. And I lost sight of that. But I want to fix it. I tilted my head. Fix it? She nodded quickly. Yes. I know I screwed up. But we can move past this. We have so much history, so much love. She reached for my hand. This time, I let her touch me, let her fingers press against my skin, warm, familiar, pleading. Then, I slowly pulled away and I watched her break. I don't love you anymore, Cecilia, I said, my voice even. She sucked in a sharp breath. What? I stared at her. Unflinching. You heard me. Her lip trembled. You don't mean that. I smiled. Yes, I do. Her breath hitched. She stepped back, shaking her head, like she couldn't process the words, because she had never considered that possibility. She had spent so much time choosing someone else that she never once thought, what if I chose to walk away? And now, she had to live with that answer. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She shook her head again. Hardy, please. I can be better. We can be better. I exhaled. No, we can't. She choked out a sob. You don't love me anymore? I shrugged. I don't even know who you are anymore. She collapsed, right there, in the doorway, crying like she was the victim, like I was the one who had destroyed us. I watched her for a moment, letting her feel the weight of everything she had lost. Then, finally, I said, go home, Cecilia. She let out a broken sob. Where's home if you're not there? I smiled sadly. That's not my problem. Then, I shut the door, and this time, she knew it was over. Cecilia didn't leave right away. She stood outside my friend's house for a long time. Maybe she thought if she just waited long enough, I'd change my mind, that I'd come back out, say I overreacted, tell her we could fix this. She was still playing her game, still believing she had control, but this time, she wasn't the one calling the shots anymore. She kept texting, Cecilia. Hardy, please. Just talk to me, Cecilia, you're not answering my calls. Can we meet somewhere, Cecilia? I know I hurt you, but you can't just walk away from our marriage like this. I didn't reply. She had walked away first, she had made her choice, and now, I was making mine. The next morning, she switched tactics. I woke up to a new message from her. Cecilia, I haven't been able to eat or sleep since you left. I feel like my whole world is falling apart. I smirked. She wasn't sorry, she was just afraid of being alone. I didn't answer, but she wasn't done yet. Later that day, my phone buzzed. This time, it wasn't her. It was a mutual friend, Jeremy. Hey man, just heard you left Cecilia? She's telling people you just walked out for no reason. I laughed. Of course she was. Cheaters and never take responsibility. They rewrite the story, they make themselves the victim. I replied simply. Me. Ask her about the guy she had dinner with at my house while I was in the hospital. Jeremy, wait, what? And just like that her perfect little lie started to unravel. That night, I was at my friend's place when the doorbell rang that I already knew who it was. I took my time walking to the door. When I opened it, there she was, Cecilia. She looked worse than before. Hair a mess, dark circles under her eyes. Like she hadn't slept in days. "Hardy," she whispered. "Please." I folded my arms. "What do you want, Cecilia?" Her breath hitched. She shook her head. "We need to talk." I tilted my head. "Why?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Because I miss you." I let the silence stretch, then, slowly, I said, "No, you don't." She flinched. "You don't miss me," I continued, my voice calm, sharp. "You miss knowing I'd always be there. You miss control. You miss the safety of knowing I'd never leave you." A tear slid down her cheek. "That's not true." I chuckled. "Yes, it is." She reached for me. I stepped back, her fingers hovered in midair. That's when I saw it, true panic, because for the first time in our entire marriage, she realized, I was really done. She let out a shaky breath. "Is this it, then?" I smiled. "This is it." Then, I shut the door in her face, and this time, she finally felt what I had felt for months: abandonment, betrayal, loss. Slamming the door in Cecilia's face should have been the end of it. She should have accepted the reality she created, that she threw away our marriage for a cheap affair, that she gambled with my trust and lost everything. But people like her, they don't know when to stop. So instead of walking away, she did what every desperate cheater does: she tried to manipulate her way back. The next morning, she texted me, "Cecilia, I know you're hurt, but please don't shut me out completely. Cecilia, we have years together. That has to count for something, Cecilia. I can't sleep knowing you hate me." I ignored her, but by noon, another text came through: "Cecilia, I left something at the house. Can I come pick it up?" That was a lie. She hadn't left anything behind. She just wanted an excuse to see me. To test if she still had power over me. I sent back one response: "Me, don't come here. I'll leave your things outside." 5 minutes later, another message: "Cecilia, can we at least talk when I get there? Please?" I didn't answer, and for the first time in our entire marriage, she had to sit with silence. By late afternoon, she arrived. I saw her pull into the driveway, her car rolling to a slow stop. She didn't get out right away. She just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, like she was trying to prepare herself. Then, slowly, she stepped out. She spotted the small box I left near the front door, the few things she had left behind. For a moment, she just stared at it. Then, finally, she bent down and picked it up. I watched from inside the house, standing near the window. She thought I wasn't looking, and that's when I saw it: the change in her face, the sad, remorseful wife act, gone, replaced by pure rage. Her hands clenched around the box, her jaw tightening, because she had just realized she really lost me, because she knew I wasn't coming outside, that I wasn't opening the door, that I wasn't giving her a chance to explain, to twist the story, to gaslight me into thinking this was somehow my fault. She had no more control, and she hated it. That night, the texts changed: "Cecilia, I guess you really don't care. Cecilia, after everything we've been through, you won't even look at me. Cecilia, you think you can just cut me out of your life like I never mattered." I stared at my phone, exhaling slowly. She was unraveling. She had gone from begging for forgiveness to lashing out, and that meant only one thing: she wasn't done causing damage. She was just getting started. I didn't reply, because now, I wasn't just ignoring her. I was waiting. I knew Cecilia better than anyone. She wasn't the type to just walk away, and soon, she was going to show me just how far she was willing to go. Cecilia was losing it. The woman who had once manipulated me so effortlessly, the woman who had spent months cheating without guilt, was now unraveling faster than I ever expected. She had gone from love bombing to guilt tripping to anger. Now, she was stepping into something worse. That night, my phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't another desperate plea for forgiveness. It was something darker. "Cecilia, you really think you're the victim here? Cecilia, you were never the perfect husband. Cecilia, maybe if you had been more present, I wouldn't have needed someone else." I smirked. There it was, the moment every cheater reaches when they realize they aren't getting their way. They turn vicious. They try to rewrite history. Make it seem like they were forced to betray you, like their selfishness was somehow your fault that I didn't take the bait. Didn't even respond. That I just waited, because Cecilia, she wasn't done. That I had just started dozing off when I heard it. Bang. Bang. Bang, someone pounding on the front door. I groggily sat up, blinking at my phone. 2:14 a.m. I already knew who it was. I dragged myself out of bed, walked to the door, and sure enough, through the peephole, I saw Cecilia. She was barefoot, hair a mess, eyes wild, like she had completely lost control. I sighed, rubbing my temple. I should have ignored it, should have just let her stand out there in the cold, alone, where she belonged. But something in her face, something about the way she looked, like she was on the edge of something dangerous, made me crack the door open just enough. Her eyes locked onto mine. "Hardy," she breathed. "Please." She stepped forward like she was going to push the door open wider. I didn't let her. I planted my hand against the frame, blocking her path. "What the hell are you doing here, Cecilia?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. She sniffled, running a shaking hand through her hair. I needed to see you." I narrowed my eyes. "At 2 in the morning?" She laughed bitterly. "You won't talk to me, Hardy." What was I supposed to do? I exhaled. "Leave me alone." Her face twisted. Something dark flickered in her eyes. Then, she did the thing that made my blood run cold. She smiled, not a soft, regretful smile, not a pleading smile, but something almost cruel, something unstable. "You really think this is over?" she murmured. I clenched my jaw. She tilted her head. "You think you can just cut me out? Pretend I never existed?" I didn't answer, because that's exactly what I was doing. She exhaled, shaking her head. "You don't get it, do you?" I raised an eyebrow. "What exactly don't I get, Cecilia?" Her smile widened just slightly, then, softly, too softly, she whispered, "You'll see." Then she turned and walked away, barefoot, silent, like a ghost. I watched her disappear into the night, and for the first time since this started, I felt something close to fear, because I knew Cecilia, and when she said, "You'll see," she meant it. Cecilia was spiraling. She had gone from begging, to blaming, to full-blown threats, and after her eerie, "You'll see," at my front door, I knew one thing for certain: she wasn't done with me. That wasn't an empty threat, that was a promise. The next morning, I checked my phone. There were no new messages from Cecilia. No missed calls. No desperate attempts to get me back. It was quiet, and somehow, that made me more nervous, because Cecilia didn't quit. She didn't just disappear, she was planning something, and I was about to find out what. Around noon, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. "Hardy speaking." A beat of silence. Then, "Hey, man," a familiar voice said. "It's Jeremy. Just wanted to give you a heads up." Jeremy was a mutual friend. Not someone I was super close to, but a guy who always knew what was going on. I frowned. "What's up?" He hesitated. "Look, I don't know what's happening between you and Cecilia, but she's telling people some pretty messed up stuff, man." I stiffened. "What kind of stuff?" Jeremy sighed. "She's saying you got aggressive with her. That you've been unstable since the accident. That she's scared of you." I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. There it was, her newest strategy. She couldn't win me back. So now, she was trying to destroy me instead. I shook my head, letting out a dry laugh. "You believe her?" Jeremy hesitated. "Look, man, I don't. But some people will. You know how this works." Yeah, I knew exactly how this worked. Cecilia wasn't just a cheater. She was a master manipulator. She had spent our entire marriage knowing how to twist reality, how to make herself look like the perfect wife, how to make me look like the problem. And now, she was playing the ultimate card, the scared, helpless ex-wife routine, because if she couldn't have me, she could at least make sure no one took my side. By the end of the day, I was getting more texts, friends, coworkers, even family members. "Hey, I heard some stuff about you and Cecilia. Is everything okay? Did something happen between you two? Just checking in, man. Let me know if you need to talk." I didn't reply, because I knew what was happening. Cecilia was doing damage control, she was flipping the script before I could tell people the truth, and worse, some people were believing her. That night, I sat in my friend's apartment, staring at the ceiling. That I had walked away from Cecilia thinking she would fade into the past, that she would be nothing but a bad memory, but now, she was actively trying to ruin me. And if I didn't do something soon, she was going to succeed. That I took a slow breath, then I grabbed my phone and I made the one call that would end this war for good. Cecilia thought she had me cornered. She thought if she spread enough lies, turned enough people against me, I'd break, but she forgot one thing I had proof. That I dialed Jeremy back. Man, I need you to do something for me. He hesitated. What's up? I exhaled. I need you to send everyone this. I forwarded him the texts, the ones where Cecilia had been begging me to take her back, the ones where she said she missed me, the ones where she showed zero signs of fear, only regret. Jeremy read them, then, after a long pause, he said, "Oh." By the next morning, everything shifted. People who had believed her story were suddenly silent, mutual friends started backtracking, and Cecilia, she stopped texting. Because for the first time she was the one being exposed. She had played the perfect victim, but now? Now, no one believed her anymore. That I knew she wasn't done, not yet, but the walls were closing in, and soon, she'd realized that she hadn't just lost me, she had lost everything. Cecilia had lost control. She had spent days spinning her lie, telling anyone who would listen that I was some unstable, dangerous ex-husband. But now, the truth was out. And no one was buying her story anymore. That I expected more texts from her, more calls, more attempts to either fix things or burn them down, but instead, she went completely silent. No messages. No voicemails, like she was waiting. And that was worse, because I knew Cecilia, she didn't quit, she was planning something bigger. Then, Jeremy texted, "Jeremy, bro, you need to know something. Cecilia's been talking to your boss." My chest tightened. That I called him immediately. "What do you mean?" Jeremy sighed. "She's trying to screw with your job. Telling people she's worried about you. That you've been acting erratic." I clenched my jaw. This was her last move. If she couldn't make me take her back, if she couldn't destroy my reputation with friends, she'd try to ruin my career. That I wasn't going to wait for her next attack. So I did something she never expected. I went to my boss first. That I walked into his office, sat down, and laid out everything. That I showed him the texts. The proof. The messages where she had begged for me back, and just like that, her final plan collapsed. My boss nodded. "If she reaches out again, let me know. We'll handle it." And just like that, Cecilia lost again. That night, I got one last text from her. "Cecilia, I hope you're happy. You ruined everything." That I stared at it for a long moment, then, finally, I typed back, "Me, no, Cecilia. You did that all by yourself." Blocked her number, deleted the chat, and this time, she really was gone. Cecilia had lost. She had tried to ruin my reputation, tried to mess with my job, tried to rewrite history, and none of it worked. But there was one thing left. Late that night, my phone buzzed, unknown number. I almost ignored it until I saw the voicemail. Her voice was shaky, broken, hearty. "I don't know who I am without you." A long pause. Then, softer, "Please. Just talk to me. One last time." I didn't reply, because she didn't deserve one last time. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order, blocked every possible way she could reach me. And when I walked out of that courthouse, for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt free. Cecilia was finally out of my life. The restraining order was official, her number was blocked, her messages erased. She had spent weeks trying to destroy me, to manipulate me, to pull me back into the web of her lies, and now, there was nothing. For the first time since this started, I didn't wake up to a missed call from her. No desperate messages. No new rumors being spread, nothing. And that was what made me uneasy, because Cecilia didn't just stop, she didn't know how to stop. She was the kind of woman who always needed an upper hand. She had fought to ruin me in every way she could, and now, it was like she had simply vanished. That evening, I walked through my house, letting the silence sink in. This place had been ours once. Now, it felt empty, not in a sad way. Not in a "I miss her" kind of way, but in a something that didn't belong here is. Finally gone kind of way that I had spent too many nights suffocating under the weight of what she had done, that I had wasted too much time wondering what I did wrong, but standing there, in the place she used to exist, I realized the truth. She was nothing more than a ghost now. Then, one last notification. An email that I hesitated before opening. It was from Cecilia, the subject line. Goodbye. I exhaled, my grip tightening on my phone. She had lost. She had no more control, and this was her final attempt to make me feel something. That I opened it. Cecilia, I don't expect you to respond. I know you probably hate me. Maybe you should. But I just wanted to say one last thing before I disappear from your life forever. I was wrong. About everything. About what I wanted. About how much I thought you'd never leave me. I thought I had all the time in the world, but I didn't. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I ruined it. I see that now. I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I won't ask for it. Just know that I never stopped loving you. Even when I did the worst things imaginable. Goodbye, Hardy. I stared at the words, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret, because Cecilia wasn't my problem anymore. I deleted the email without responding, blocked her from my inbox, and when I set my phone down, I realized something. She was really gone, and I had never felt so free. Cecilia was gone. No more texts. No more emails. No more desperate attempts to drag me back into her chaos. That I had spent so much time letting her take up space in my mind, analyzing her lies, replaying her betrayals, trying to figure out why she did it. But now, there was nothing left to figure out. She had lost me, and I had won my life back. That I woke up the next morning, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel that familiar heaviness in my chest. There was no lingering resentment. No bitterness, just peace. That I looked around my house, the place that had once felt like a prison, and realized that it finally belonged to me again. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt right, because Cecilia had never been the thing that made this house a home. That I was. Over the next few weeks, something became very clear. The people who had believed Cecilia's lies, the ones who had turned their backs on me without even asking for my side, they stayed silent. But the ones who had seen through her from the start, they were still here, still checking in. Still inviting me out, still reminding me that my life didn't end just because my marriage did. And that's when I realized something important. Cecilia had only ever been a part of my life. She was never all of it, and now, I could finally start living for myself again. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's this: cheaters don't deserve closure. They don't deserve one last conversation, one last hug, one last chance to explain why they did what they did, because at the end of the day, their choices are not your burden to carry. Cecilia made her bed, and she would have to live with the emptiness she created. On the other hand, I was finally free, and for the first time in a long time I was happy.